Over the last few projects, I've thought a lot about the past mistakes that I've made and a lot of the things that I've learned in my years of production experience that, well, they've just made my life a lot easier. Even though it may not have felt like it the past few projects, here are 5 tips that will make your life on set so much better. So tip number 1 is to just practice your craft on your off days. Is this lighting setup that I have right now have anything to do with what we're talking about? No, but it's fun to get out there and just play with different setups, learn how your equipment works, know it inside and out so that when you get out onto set the day of, you know exactly what you're gonna be doing going into that shoot. And if something goes wrong, you're able to correct for that pretty quickly. So getting to test your lighting setups, test your audio gear beforehand, really have everything dialed in on your camera is incredibly important in your pre-production, but it's also just a lot of fun to learn your craft a lot better than you would if you just do the same 3-point lighting setup day in and day out. The last few interviews, I've been doing a lot more of these 8x frames, doing a bit more of a top-down looking setup, and today, really happy accident was just having the spotlight behind me where it actually kind of looks like a moon because of the texture paint that we had. So I wouldn't have discovered this setup here had I not just gone out and started playing with lights a little bit more. And that's one of the most important things that you can do. A perfect example of me knowing my equipment inside and out was working with the Toronto Argonauts just the other day, where we had planned to shoot in the players' dressing room. We wanted that Netflix style interview, nice big wide, big soft sourcey lighting, when we realized that their practice schedule had changed and players would be crossing our paths in front of camera, behind camera, and it just wouldn't work for the shoot day and we couldn't reschedule. So we just had to think on our feet and find another location. We found another location and I had quickly built a lighting setup in my head. There would be a suite up on the 4th floor of BMO Field. Upon arriving to the suite that we had booked, we found out it was full of furniture everywhere and there wouldn't be enough time to change that setup again. So with half an hour left to go, we had to change our lighting setup for a 3rd time and quickly were able to reposition to the concession hall of BMO Field, where we weren't able to quite get the same look of that really dark fall off in the background, but we got close enough to make it work because I knew the equipment that I had, I knew what I could work with to get as close to that look as possible by just readjusting some of the lights that we were using. I knew that I had the output that I needed. We had rented a Delta EcoFlow battery bank ahead of time, and so I knew that those lights could be supported by that battery bank, and we were able to save the shoot. So just being able to think on your feet really quickly when you know your equipment inside and out is so crucial when you're on a shoot that you're getting paid maybe a few $1,000s to get that content done and shot, and your client still expects a high quality output from the day of shooting. So that is tip number 1, is just play with your equipment, know exactly how it works inside and out, and practice your craft ahead of time, and then it will help you immensely on the day of your shoot. Now I can use the same example from last week's shoot for tip number 2, and that's to work with incredibly talented people. I brought out my friend Brandon, and Brandon and I work really well together because we actually swap the director of photography and camera assistant role often. Sometimes I'll assist him and vice versa, and last week he was helping me on this one. I didn't have to explain too much of what I was trying to do. He knew that we're gonna throw the 8x frame up, he knew how to build the equipment that we had, and he could kind of think ahead of what I was trying to do without me having to explain that to him, which just saves a lot of time on set. And a lot of these things have been said in many other videos I'm sure you've watched, but it's so crucial to just get it drilled in your head to know people that are good at their jobs, you work well together, and it'll make your day go a lot smoother. He was also able to make suggestions for me on the day when my brain is trying to get multiple things done at once, knowing that coaches are gonna be arriving any minute, and he could make those adjustments, like adding a catch light for the eye that I would have otherwise forgotten, and adding a tube light in the background to boost the levels on a couple of the plants that we had in the background of the shot. Working with talented people is so important to getting a project done as smoothly as possible, and just having that second set of hands was so great. There's no way that I can do all this stuff when I'm outside of the studio on my own. And yeah, that's it. Work with great people. Tip number 3 is an obvious one, and that's just to make sure you location scout. Get your tech scout done, know the area that you're gonna be shooting in so that you can flag any issues that might arise before they do pop up on you. And you can also manage your client's expectations when you're at the shoot location. Okay, so I got the set mostly roughed in. Do the white ultra bounce. On the rare occasion I get a scout day, I ask if I can do a pre-light. This was one of those days, and it saved me on the day of the shoot as players arrived way earlier than expected. I also use this type of video where I'm kind of doing a voiceover for you guys and for myself so that I can go back and watch it later on to make sure that I'm not actually missing any of the gear that I might need for the shoot. Set this up just in case we don't, because the little C-stand will be nice for a director's monitor. White backdrop for this guy here. We'll set that up in the morning. Okay, and instead of going through and just sitting down in the dark back there, I figured I'd take you through what an actual location scout would look like, and you're sick of seeing just my face. So, Brandon, it was too hectic before to actually film some BTS when we were doing our shoot. So, Brandon's a DP as well, and he's gonna run us through how he would do a location scout. Let's say we were doing a sit-down interview on some type of a murder mystery where we're in this abandoned warehouse. Brandon, welcome to Evil Empire.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're both very happy to be here. So take us through, what would be the process if you're coming in here, you're looking for a spot to film, just take us through your whole setup.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that you're looking for as DP is always light for me. I'm always looking, where is the light? Where is it coming from? Where is it going? In this space here, we can kind of see there's a lot of windows. There's north-facing windows and there's west-facing windows, and they go all the way back up, actually behind us. So I have an app on my phone, I forget what it's called. It basically just shows you where the sun travels. So if I know what time we're shooting, I would kind of plan for shooting along, wherever the sun would be, which then would bring you into, like, I guess, style questions of, do you want to be able to see outside the windows, or are you okay kind of having them be glowy or not quite blown out but nice and bright, or are you going to black them out? What's the style? If you want to see outside the windows, you're going to need power. You're going to need a lot of power. Regardless, you should have power, but you're probably going to need a decent amount. So you look for outlets, you look for breakers, you talk to the venue, see what their actual load is, what they can actually handle, what lights you could actually bring.
Christoph, pop quiz.
Yeah.
How many amps do our breakers have here?
Some of them are 15, some of them are 20.
How many?
You can tell by the 15 are the regular looking ones, and the ones that the left thing is like a sideways T, that's a 20 amp.
So 15 and 20?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did I win?
And that's pretty much everything for light. Then I guess the other kind of concerns would be sound. In a place like this, like, you can really hear and feel this room. So you might want to, or have to, lean into that a little bit, but there's lots of ways that you can mitigate that. You can mitigate that with the way that you mic people and the way that you frame people. If you are able to frame closer or shoot on longer lenses generally, have less headroom, you can get a pencil mic closer. The sound won't be as much of a problem. But you also got to consider things like road noise. There's a street out here, a main street. There's train tracks back that way. We kind of know the schedule and when times are not so great here and when times are better. But if this were a new location, I would look up, what's the train schedule like? Like, are we going to roll up and then all of a sudden, like, every single passenger train is going to start coming by? Or, we're actually right on a hospital route. So sometimes you have to think about, like, not just cars, but also ambulances might be coming by. So these are all kind of considerations that you'd take into account. Once you kind of have, like, your location, like your actual spot that you're going to set up, I have like an app called Kadridge on my phone that I pull out, kind of get rough frames on, like, I can program in my camera and my lenses, kind of get a rough frame of what I want to see, what we're going to see, and then you can consider all the other things like sound, where you can put sound blankets, dampening, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, most of the stuff that you and I shoot, when we are shooting, it's a very small crew. So you kind of have
Yes.
to wear every hat on the crew.
And most of the time, we don't get like a pre-scout a lot of the time. So you kind of have to make all these decisions within like 30 minutes. And then you have to, so it means that when you're going into these locations, if you don't have that ahead of time, you need to be prepared with like backups and then backups for your backups. So you might need to have, like when we did that shoot with the Argos, I think you had like enough lights for us to comfortably do like 3 completely different lighting setups, and enough rigging and grip gear for us to do 3 completely different lighting setups. And then once we saw the space and then had to pivot to a new space, we could make those decisions, and we had to do that. I think, yeah, it was literally about 30 minutes we had to load in and make those choices.
And then we had to pivot to a third space, as I talked about before. But these are all the things that you should really check in on, make that checklist ahead of time. And the app that Brandon was talking about was Sunseeker. It's an amazing app, so you can track the sun, see where it's gonna be. But if you aren't able to get into your location, obviously things like Google Maps, Google Street View, so you have some idea as to where you're gonna be filming and what issues might pop up, so you can let your client or producer know ahead of time. But thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it. Now, the fourth tip that I have kind of goes along with that checklist that we just talked about, and that's to draw a lighting diagram before you get to your location, because that's actually going to help you build that checklist so you know that you have absolutely everything you need to get the shots that you're looking for, whether it's an interview or a scene for a short film. So I always like to go through and I'll just either sketch it on a sketch pad or in the iPad and just start to draw up what stands I'm going to be using, what frames I'll be using, the lighting, the cameras, and your audio packages. And then from that diagram, you can start to look at it and say, okay, I'm gonna need 3 C stands for this. I'm gonna need a 600C, a 600D. I'm gonna need some tubes over here, and I'm gonna need some negative fill over there. And as I'm starting to write that through, I'm thinking about the extra accessories to make sure that I can mount those lights. So I need an extra 4 gobo or grip heads over here. I need some grip arms attached to this C-stand to make sure that I can get that diffusion set up. And then I'm looking at the camera and tripod. Okay, do I have my camera? Do I have my tripod, my media, and my batteries? And that diagram really helps me build out that checklist for the day ahead and make sure that my shoot goes smoothly and I don't have to call my brother to Uber me a memory card. That happened once and I'll never do it again. Now, the fifth and final tip that I have for you today is just to be comfortable being in charge. That's not to say that you should be a dick, but you need to be comfortable telling people what you need to make sure that the shoot goes as smoothly as possible and delegating tasks throughout the day so that you're not trying to go and set up C-stands on every side. If you've got the crew, use them. Tell them, you need the C-stands raised up a little bit. You can check the frame and make sure that the subject is looking as good as possible and not running around all over the place like a chicken with your head cut off. It's also a little more dangerous when you're trying to do these things on your own, especially when you have rigging up over your subject's head. You always want to have a couple people to help you out, whether that's your producer as well or your camera assistant. Having that extra set of hands is not only an ease of mind for yourself, but it's also safer throughout the day and it's going to help you load out a lot quicker. So being able to delegate tasks throughout the day in a way that makes people want to work with you is just the best way to work and will make your day go by a lot smoother, faster, and it'll keep your day on set a lot more fun. Okay, so just to recap, you want to practice your craft before you even get out to your shoot and know your equipment like inside and out. You got to know it inside and out to just be confident when you're on set. Tip number 2 is to work with good people so that when you have that brain lapse and you can't remember how a piece of gear works or you can't find it or you just need someone to run out to a car, get it for you, build something for you, knowing good people who are as good or better than you at your job working with you and returning that favor is crucial to making your shoot day go a whole lot easier. Tip number 3 is location scout. Know that location as well as you can before you get there because, well, then you can be as prepared as possible and know the equipment that you're going to need to bring out for that shoot. And if you can't get to your location, Google Maps, Google Street View, call the location, try and get as much info as you can on it, and that will also help you quite a bit. Then tip number 4
is to draw a lighting diagram if you're going to be doing a more intense lighting setup. Drawing that diagram is going to help you build your equipment list that you need. It's also going to just help your producer, director, your camera assistant, all the people who are going to be on set understand what your ideas are and what they're going to need to do to help you do your job better. You can also help them do their job better by, let's say, the director knowing what the constraints are to the equipment that you might have or the location that you might have and where you're going to be shooting in that location. Then tip number 5 is just don't be afraid to call the shots a bit. Know that people are there to help you get this shoot done and ask for things when you need them. I still feel uncomfortable doing it at times, and I work with pretty small crews. Like, I'm talking 1-2 other people. I know that I'm hiring people that are as good or better than me at most of these roles, and it's weird sometimes asking them to do a lesser role, but they're there to help you, and they're probably there because they enjoy working with you. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Just don't be a dick. All right, well, that's all I got for you today. Less consistent, but we're gonna try and keep rolling with this thing here. I just bought another vintage lens, which I'm pretty excited about, and hopefully I'll get to talk about that shortly. All right, we'll see you next time.